All right, welcome in. It's the Breer Report for February the 4th. We're here on Radio Row in New Orleans, the best city for the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 59 is just 5 days away, and we have a few things to get to, a couple non-Super Bowl related, then we'll get back to the big game on Sunday. And the first thing that we want to hit was the big news of the week to this point, and that's Myles Garrett requesting a trade from the Cleveland Browns. He is headed into his 9th NFL season. And this is something that didn't come out of nowhere for Cleveland. In fact, the willingness he had to go public with it, I think, tells us a couple of things. Number one, this didn't happen yesterday. This has been on the Browns' plate for at least a little while now, and that he was willing to go public with his trade demand was, I think, a result of the Browns' unwillingness to accommodate that trade demand. So he had a written statement. Obviously, a lot of this was coordinated. And it puts the Browns now in a position where they don't have to do anything. And it serves Myles Garrett's purpose because for now, the trade demand's out there. Other teams are going to call. The Browns get pushed down the plank on this. There's pressure on them to at least figure out what his value is. And again, they don't have any plans to trade him right now. But this, at the very least, puts the Browns in a position where they can figure out what his value is without making a single phone call on their own. And for Garrett, again, it puts pressure on the Browns to at least do something here, whether that's going back to him with a contract adjustment, whether it means going and trying to figure out a way where they can put their roster in a position to compete for a championship now and change his mind, or it could mean trading him. The second thing is, again, and this relates back to that, this does put pressure on the Browns to build their roster up if the idea is to keep Myles Garrett. And I think it's a good type of pressure for the Browns to be facing. I don't want to, give you every silver lining that, you could possibly think of with this situation. But certainly, I think when you look at this from the Browns' perspective, it sort of becomes nut-cutting time for them, where you have to make a decision now on what you're going to do and which path you're going to take. Are you going to double down on the core that you have right now with guys who have been core members of your team, guys like Garrett, guys like Denzel Ward, guys like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and Joel Bitonio, who are a little further into their careers? Double down on them, do something really aggressive at the quarterback position, get aggressive about adding other guys to the roster so you can convince somebody like Garrett to stay, or do you go through a little bit of a roster reset? And I do think part of that is going to be taking a very serious look in the mirror and figuring out where you are as a team. And the way you do that is you look at timelines and you go in and you say, okay, here's where Myles Garrett is age-wise. He's 29 years old. Denzel Ward's only a year younger than him. You have two guys that are very important pieces of the team. You've got other guys who are in that age range. Looking in the mirror with those guys means looking in the mirror and saying, by the time we're ready to compete for a championship, are these guys still going to have time left in their career? In other words, is there a window here where we're going to be able to do enough to compete in the AFC with Patrick Mahomes, with Joe Burrow, with Lamar Jackson, with Josh Allen? Can we get up to that level fast enough where these guys, these important pieces of our team, are going to still have enough left in the tank to help put us over the top? Because if the answer to that question is no, maybe you do have to take a harder look at some of those things, and you do have to consider offloading those veteran players while they still have value and can bring value back. It's a really interesting position that the Browns are in. All right, our second topic. The Las Vegas Raiders are making a very serious commitment and following through on the promise that Tom Brady made to a bunch of the coaching candidates that went through there. And I can give you my own background on this, going back to really the beginning of the coaching carousel. And this relates back to a coach that they didn't get. That's Ben Johnson. When Johnson and his camp planned things out, going back to November and December, they didn't want to go through a full tour of interviews. So the whole idea for them was assess the openings and then decide which job we could legitimately see ourselves taking. And so there were a number of jobs that they decided they wouldn't see themselves taking. And so they communicated to those teams quietly, don't even bother putting a request in. We don't want to embarrass you. We don't want to look like jerks. So please just, we'll respectfully decline here. We won't have to do anything officially where we're saying no to you, and everybody will go on their merry way. Well, The Raiders were one of those teams, and despite all of that, the Raiders still put a request in. Johnson's camp wasn't happy about it. They wind up calling the Raiders, and the Raiders basically said, we're going to get you on the phone with Tom Brady. So Tom Brady calls Ben Johnson's camp, and he basically makes the promise to them. With some of these new minority owners we have coming in, with my business partner Tom Wagner, with Mike Meldman, who's one of the founders of a big real estate company, and this is the big one, Egan Durbin, the CEO of Silver Lake Capital. We're going to be able to create resources that other people who've been through this building in the past have not had. Brady more or less promised to them, we're going to do what it takes to make this a first-class operation. We already have a first-class practice facility. We have a first-class stadium. We have a first-class brand. The Raiders are an iconic brand. And Brady promised, I'm not going to put my name on something that's going to be embarrassing to anyone else here. And it didn't wind up working out with Ben, but now I think you see the result of that promise coming through, where they go and they bring in Pete Carroll. They go and they get Chip Kelly out of Ohio State at $6 million per year. They give Patrick Graham a raise. He was already making over $3 million, get him closer to $4 million. So now you're talking about nearly $10 million invested per year in your coordinators. And they bring in they start to build out a new front office. And one thing that all of these guys have in common is they all have the respect of Brady. Pete Carroll obviously competed in Super Bowls against Tom Brady. Chip Kelly actually helped the Patriots modernize their offense, and in 2011 and 2012 worked with some of their coaches to incorporate more tempo in what they were doing. Brady, because of that, is well aware of what Chip Kelly is capable of. Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator, again, was in New England with Brady. John Spytek, their new general manager, was in Tampa with Brady and built a strong relationship with him based on running their scouting meetings. He ran the scouting meetings for Brady that Brady would do on Tuesdays. It's something that Belichick and Nick Caserio did for Brady in New England. And through the 3 years of doing that, Spytek earned Brady's respect. They are even bringing in a new vice president from Denver, a guy named Mark Thews, who worked with Spytek in Denver. Well, he's got a tie to Brady as well, in that he's one of the high school classmates of Josh McDaniels. That's how he wound up in the NFL to begin with. He joined the Broncos in 2009 when McDaniels was the coach there. McDaniels and Brady are very close, so there's another tie there. I think what you're seeing now is Tom Brady's fingerprints are all over that organization. Does that mean he's going to run it day to day? It does not. My understanding is he's still going to live full-time in Florida because of his family situation. He is going to be there. But make no mistake about it, like, he's going to have an impact on everything they do. He's going to have input on everything they do. And he's going to make sure that place remains aligned. And so Mark Davis is still a very big part of this. Mark Davis is still the principal owner. Mark Davis, I think, deserves credit for finding the right people who could invest resources back into his team, and finding a guy who could change the image of the team in Tom Brady. And so I think the Raiders become one of the more interesting teams in the league, even though they've got one of the worst rosters in the league right now. They become one of the more interesting teams in the league for this offseason. 10 draft picks, over $100 million in cap space, and the lure of those guys, of having Tom Brady involved, of having Pete Carroll as the head coach, of having a new general manager in John Spytek. To me, they're one of the most interesting teams to take a look at when you look at where we're going in the 2025 offseason. All right. Finally, our final topic. We are going to get to the big game here. I can't wait for this one. This is a fantastic matchup. Two of the best teams of the last 5 years, Chiefs and Eagles in the Super Bowl. I think you've got the NFL's best coach and quarterback, best coach-quarterback combination, one of the best coach-quarterback combinations of all time, in Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, going against, I think, the NFL's most talented roster, just to take nothing away from the job that Nick Sirianni has done in Philadelphia, because I think he's really undersold as their head coach. And so I want to give you guys a couple of things that I've been able to ascertain talking to people inside the game, and maybe get you guys into the nitty-gritty a bit, give you guys a few things to watch. I talked to a handful of guys, coaches, executives, who coached against both these teams. There's a bunch of common opponents these two teams have. So I'll give you three things to keep an eye on. Number one, there aren't very many weaknesses on the Eagles roster. But if there is one, it's that they're very static on both sides of the ball, and they're static on defense. They're very good on defense. They're able to do a lot of things defensively post-snap. But really, they don't move guys around quite as much as the Chiefs do. So one thing to watch, is can the Chiefs get their fast guys? And this has not been a fast offense the last couple of years. They brought in Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy to address that this offseason. They haven't got as much out of both those guys as they expected. Worthy took a little time to come along as a rookie. Brown, of course, was hurt for most of the year. But they really saw themselves as getting back to doing some of the things they were able to do with Tyreek Hill a few years ago before trading him away. They're going to move those two guys inside, and I think they're going to try to match those guys up against the Eagles safeties and get them in situations where they're running in space. So that'd be one area, I think one specific area where you can look for what Kansas City's going to be able to do to the Eagles defense. Number 2, the deployment of Joe Thuney, I think, is a massive element to this game, and maybe as big a single element to this game as there is. He's done a great job of stabilizing the left tackle position for them and has been so important. They had a couple of young guys, Wanye Morris and Kingsley Suamataia. They brought in DJ Humphries and really had been a revolving door. Joe Thuney, who was a college left tackle, has been an absolute Iron Man over the course of his career, his 9 years in the NFL, or 10 years in the NFL. He's going for his 5th Super Bowl title, but he's been a guard in the NFL, left tackle and college guard in the pros. His ability to kick out and play left tackle has been massive, but that's left a little bit of a hole at left guard. So now what do the Eagles do with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis at defensive tackle? The Eagles are good, not great on the edges. They are great on the interior. So those two guys, Milton Williams, those guys are going to present challenges inside for the Chiefs. Do the Chiefs now take Joe Thuney and move him back inside and maybe go with DJ Humphries, who's been nicked up and is older at left tackle, or one of the young guys? Do they rotate? Do they just leave Joe Thuney and live with it inside? I think that's one of the big elements to watch in this game, and you'll be able to tell almost right away what they're planning to do. And then finally, I think the quarterback matchup obviously is a massive part of this. I think, when it comes to slowing down Patrick Mahomes, a huge part of it's going to be how they address Travis Kelce and what they do in critical situations against Travis Kelce. And to me, it's going to be how they allocate their middle of the field players. In other words, if you're going to put a spy on Patrick Mahomes to try to keep him from scrambling and getting off schedule where he's really dangerous, well, then you're going to take away a resource in the middle of the field, which leaves Kelce open. I think even at Kelce's age, even though he's not running the way he used to, that becomes a huge part of how Patrick Mahomes plays. I think he'll play good. Really good. I think you can count on that based on how he's played on all the biggest stages. Whether or not he can put together a vintage Patrick Mahomes performance might ride on how the Eagles handle Travis Kelce in those key situations. And then for Jalen Hurts, I think it's hitting on a couple balls downfield. Steve Spagnuolo is not going to sit there and let Saquon Barkley beat him. He is not going to sit there and let Jalen Hurts scramble out of the pocket and make big plays and turn second and long into third and short. So what the Chiefs, I think, will try to do is they'll say, if you can beat us downfield, we can live with it. But we're going to roll our corners up on you. We're going to give help over the top. We're going to commit our resources to stopping the run game. And look, like if you can beat us over the top, if Jalen Hurts can get the ball downfield on us, well, we have to live with that. And so much of that, of course, is going to come down to whether or not Chris Jones and George Karlaftis and all those guys get home. But I think that that's a big part of it, is what are we going to see from the Eagles as far as getting the ball downfield to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, which, of course, will loosen some things up. And that ultimately is what creates the big plays later in the game for Saquon Barkley and even Jalen Hurts in the run game. Appreciate you guys coming out. This won't be the last Breer Report this week. We're going to do a couple more of these. I think we'll have a mailbag edition. I got to check with Ken on that. I think we'll have a mailbag edition, and we'll have more specifically on the game later in the week. Always appreciate you guys coming out. Check out the MMQB for all of the content covering every angle of Super Bowl 59. And we'll see you guys again. I think it'll be with a mailbag a little later in the week.